Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Usmat Parang Saparitajaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind attendance. As we continue, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, verses 17 to 27, Punishment and Reward. Om Gyanatimiwandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sarva Shastra Payusha, Sarva Vedeka Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokai Tritprada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kali Dvando Didaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna, who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Vashashirayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading, you attain transcendental bliss. For your syllabus rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madhikabandhu Mad Sangim Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Asadu sadhu tadahi natini chochataraka hanamuncha kada chinmam premna ritkatayo spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, give us saintliness and unsaintly. O uplift the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in Mahatma throat, accompanying pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya Yaton Vyaditaratas Charte Swabhigna Swarat Tene Brahma Hidayadi Kavaye Muyanti Yat Suraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Chisargom Risha Damna Swena Sadani Nirastakwakam Satyam Param Dhimaihi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being, by whom even great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation on the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanal Pasha Sabya Kalabas Minyuge Jana Manda Sumana Mandayo Mandabhagyupadrita. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, many but short-lived, the quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayan Namaskritya Narachevam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan, which is the supermost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaipum Soparo Dharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshajay Ahitukya Pratyata Yayatma Suprisaditi. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Dhyanayatya Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of God, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tattat tavidas tattvam yat gnanam advayam parameti paramatmeti bhagavaneti sabhyate. Learn the transcendentals to know the absolute truth, all this non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shru Shru Shrosha Dhananasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. Outwise born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great services done. By such service, one gains eternity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Riddhantastaya Bhadrani Vidunati Suritam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor, the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service under the personality of God, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us cover some feedback from last week's or the previous week's lesson. Canto 1, chapter 17, verse 17 verses. If there's anything you would like to share, please put that in the chat box and we'll cover those. Namabhati Radhika says, cow is mother and bull father. Glories of Gomata is beautiful. Cow inhales and exhales oxygen. Her womb is heaven. Where she stands is sacred, and many more. Yes, the glories of Mother Cow, our mother and our father, of all living entities. And Prabhupada specifically focused on the fact that they need to be looked after. If we do not look after our mother and father in the form of the cow and the bull, there is absolutely no question of happiness for the living entities. So it's a very, very profound instruction and also a very universal principle. We can never achieve happiness if they have tears in their eyes. So that was Prabhupada's 50% that he still had to achieve in terms of his mission. The first 50 was to establish Krishna consciousness all over the world as an institution to study and teach the philosophy of Krishna consciousness to the people. And then Prabhupada wanted to set up the example of how to look after cows, how to live off the land, and simply depend on Krishna in this way and be happy. People are striving to be happy and complicating their lives in trying to be happy. So very important instruction. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, we were hearing the glories of cows and the bull. Sorry for putting you on the spot sometimes with these topics, but can you share something with regards to the whole vegan ahimsa milk situation, especially for us on the devotional path? Yes. So if we study Srila Prabhupada's books, we see that, and Prabhupada is going to speak about that also in today's verses, the science is that we should consume products where there is the least amount of suffering caused to the other living entities. Nature's arrangement is that one living entity is food for another. But human being means that they will consume living entities and products that cause harm to other living entities with the least amount of suffering. You cannot avoid the suffering. Even a tree goes through suffering in giving us fruits, vegetables, etc. But because of the consciousness of the tree, there is minimal suffering. And then we offer that to Krishna and he becomes blessed. Now, we find that if we really analyze and see what is going on in terms of, even in this case, the dairy farms, the cows are exploited. We can extend that across all areas. So the philosophy of those who are vegan, that we do not take milk or milk products because of the harm caused to living entities like cows, we could extend that even further. Well, what about exploitation of companies that are producing cell phones and exploiting the laborers that are producing the cell phones? All the different products that we use, all the suffering and exploitation that goes behind that supply chain. Are we aware of that? And are we consuming that? Are we using those products? So the philosophy of ahimsa or vegan is not as complete as the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, which includes no exploitation and no suffering. Ideally, if we as devotees run all the factories, that means, for example, Prabhupada said if you have a factory, then they obviously no exploitation, but you need to cook breakfast for all the guests, all the workers. So the first thing you have to do is have breakfast. All the workers, they come and you give them sumptuous breakfast and chant Hare Krishna. See, this is not exploitation. In this way, they'll be happy. So ideally, devotees need to run this. They need to run the supply chain. They need to run the economy. They need to be the king, the president, like Maharaj Parikshit. Then there's no exploitation. We read already, Prabhupada says that the Sudras, those working class, they are provided everything. They don't have lack in terms of material facility to work. Completely different from what we're experiencing now. So how do we then still practice Krishna consciousness with these exploitative elements? And that's why generally it's a personal issue or personal option to what extent one wants to avoid or engage. And when they, for example, brought this point up with Srila Prabhupada in terms of milk, because they were using milk for Mangal sweets to offer to the deities. And Prabhupada encouraged that we have our own cows and milk from those cows that are not exploited. That's the first, that's the best. But we cannot stop offering Mangal sweets if that option is not available. Then you take the milk and the milk that's offered to the deities in this way that the cows get the benefit. So Prabhupada didn't stop it, but at the same time, it's not that we should not have a plan. We should make arrangements. We should definitely have a strategy so that we can eventually have our own milk. And in this way, karma-free and ahimsa, non-violent milk. But in terms of individually, we find there are many devotees that do not consume milk products. They're vegan because of this principle. And there are others, who still offer the milk to Krishna, and the cows get benefit because it's offered. according to one's devotion, Krishna accepts, understanding the situation practically, and then make also try to make arrangement. So yes, it's not black and white, but there's shades of gray. All depends on the individual practitioner, the level of his devotion. So in this way, we cannot be fanatical. At the same time, we do not condone the fact that, yes, they can keep exploiting cows. No. So in the beginning, we may be able to, use that, or let's say use the milk and then slowly make arrangements. So in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada said, there'll always be contamination. Everything is contaminated in the supply chain. Somewhere along the line, there is exploitation, there's contamination. So to stop using everything is not the best principle, but to engage everything appropriately in spreading Krishna consciousness, in Yukta Vairagya, glorifying the Lord. That may be a higher principle, at the same time not to be exploited for sense gratification, or if one is attached and one is using that principle. So basically, that is in relation to the aspect of vegan or ahimsa. Even sugar, white sugar, it's contaminated. And Prabhupada said we have to use. See? So if we can get our own sugar factory and try to see if we can make sugar without the contamination, yes, glorious. And as Krishna consciousness expands more and more, then the time will come. During Krishna's pastime, when Krishna was present, then there was milk, there was sugar, all these products were there. So they were available because of the devotees that were there in doing that. So as Krishna consciousness expands, the society expands, the support structure expands, the resources expands, then the devotees will take up these initiatives according to the inclination to then offer this to the world. So I hope that sheds some light on that principle. Dhammarati Radhika Nalini Prabhu says, we need leaders like Maharaj Parikshit. Yes. Pure devotees. Motherless says, Hare Krishna. It's a wonderful example of a leader of a nation in the age of Kali. We are lacking in this type of leadership, and society suffers because we are Sudras. Only selfish interest is primary focus in power now. And so humans don't really have protection. The mother and father, cow and bull are not protected. Then what to speak of animals and environment? True. In relation to the point we're mentioning, we need to re-educate the leaders and the society at large who vote these leaders into a position by which they are not qualified. Parikshit is a wonderful example of a leader. And it's going to be a journey. We know that we need such leaders, and we want such leaders, but it's not a switch. Okay, click, leader is there. Unfortunately, not. And the leaders also don't fall from the sky. It's a culture that needs to be embedded in the fiber of the society, that culture of Krishna consciousness. And that culture, the seed of that culture is what Srila Prabhupada sowed into the ground. At least we can say the seed was sown by Lord Chaitanya and slowly watered, harvested. And then it was not really died, but got buried again, staying, what's the word? So it's in the ground, not dead, but still alive, but not visible. And then slowly, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, they started to water the seed. And Prabhupada spread this culture all over the world to really plant these seeds across the globe. And over the last 50 odd years, it's been growing, flourishing. So yes, it's going to be a journey. It's going to take time. And there will come a time when the masses of the country understand this Krishna consciousness, and collectively we can then elect. His Holiness Bhakti Brave Babu Maharaj in Mauritius, he started the journey. He bought some land, and the idea was to get land, start a community, and slowly expand the community so that we practically take over like a state, like a city. Small, because it's an island, so it's small city. And then you elect a devotee who will then represent that city in the parliament, and in this way assist making the rules and regulations, and in this way expand. So Prabhupada also predicted Mauritius, Ireland, and one more city, name I forgot, one of 3 cities. Prabhupada said they'll be the first Krishna conscious country in the world, which implies that there will be a time when the country will be Krishna conscious and there'll be a Krishna conscious leader. May or may not be as powerful as Maharaj Parikshit. That only time will tell. But yes, now we have a very, very bad bargain. We have to deal with the current leaders. So because we are concerned about the current leaders, and that's good, but we cannot influence them, or we cannot change the situation for whatever reasons may be there. We will have to deal with how we react to the situation, right? So you can't change the situation, but you are concerned about the situation. So then what do? It's how you now react to that situation. And this is what's going to come very, very clearly in these verses, in terms of how do we respond and react to situations, especially when we are at the receiving end of, inverted commas, exploitation. That's here from Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's just cover some power statements by Srila Prabhupada. Cow is meant to deliver milk, and the bull is meant to produce grains. Thus, cow and bull are mother and father of human beings. The mother and father must be given all protection and not be killed. The influence of Kali will keep them in the darkness of ignorance. Despite all endeavors for peace and prosperity, the people will fail to achieve them unless they try to see that the cow and bulls are happy in all respect. Human life is especially meant for knowing the signs of God. But foolish creatures, especially in this age of Kali, instead of knowing God scientifically, make propaganda against religious belief as well as the existence of God, even though they are always bound by the laws of God, by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, and disease. When Krishna was personally present, the code of Krishna were being followed without question. But in his absence, such codes are presented in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam for the guidance of the blind persons who happen to be at the helm of all affairs. So we are continuing verses 17 to 27. Parikshit discusses the cause of suffering of cow and earth and bull dharma. So we heard about Afana Prabhu's feedback. I'll just read. Prabhupada lists a couple of situations where cheating is used to break lower rule for a higher cause. He also counts himself. Someone may argue that in principle, cheating was committed and it changes nothing because the act of cheating is cheating at the end. How can we make a distinction so that the cheating he speaks about, committed by Lord Krishna. Raghunath Das, Maj Yudhishthir, and Vidura. How is this transcendental fraud justified from normal cheating that the philosophy speaks ill of? So Prabhupada, the example is you want to go into water without getting wet. And if you cannot justify, because at least individually you can't justify if one is not transcendently situated. Kings like Maj Parikshit, Lord Krishna, personalities like Lord Krishna, Prabhupada, they were transcendently situated. So if they're transcendently situated, then they see transcendentally, they think transcendentally, they act transcendentally, completely pure of any ill intention. So when they act, even an act that apparently seems like cheating is transcendently beneficial for all. So that's how we motivate it. Not that I can cheat, because Prabhupada says, there's instances that we can do that. No. If you're not on that level of Krishna consciousness, then it's best for you just to be normal and apply according to your level of Krishna consciousness. Those who are more advanced and are completely pure, and they are able to then use this aspect of transcendental cheating to bring Krishna consciousness to others. So because Prabhupada did that, doesn't mean I can do that. I do not have the qualification. I do not have the adhikar. So Prabhupada warned us of that, right? That you may not have the adhikar. I have the adhikar. I have the eligibility. I can do that. You may not be able to do that. So you avoid that aspect, right? That's how it's justified. Like we see Krishna in Mahabharata, he did things that people would say, but hold on, he's God. How can he do that? He told Yudhishthira to say a lie. How can he do that? He spoke a lie. And he's God. Yes, he's God. That's why he can do that. You can't. You're not God. If you do that, you have to be ready with the karma that comes in that situation. So therefore, understand where one is, and then act accordingly, and then strive to progress. All right, let us start text 17. Dharmo vacha. So understand the situation that we are in now. Kali was beating the cow. They're all on one leg, both on one leg. And the cow was crying, bull was crying. Maj Parikshit comes on the scene. He sees Kali doing this. So he clearly understands who's the culprit. Then he speaks to Dharma and asks Dharma, how, you're in this situation, what is the cause of your situation? And now Dharma responds. Etadva pandave yanam yuktam artha bhayam vacha yesam guna gunai krishno do bhagavan krita. The personality of religion said, these words just spoken by you befit a person of the Pandava dynasty, captivated by the devotional qualities of the Pandavas. Even Lord Krishna, the personality of God, had performed duties as a messenger. So the first response of Dharma was in appreciation of Maj Parikshit, his prowess, his devotion, his ability to protect. So Dharma was very, very pleased. Prabhupada in the purport says, the assurances and challenges made by Maj Parikshit are never exaggerations of his real power. The Maharaj said that even the denizens of heaven could not escape his stringent government if they were violators of religious principles. He was not falsely proud, for a devotee of the Lord is equally as powerful as the Lord, or sometimes more powerful by his grace. And any promise made by a devotee, though it may be ordinarily very difficult to fulfill, is properly executed by the grace of the Lord. So very beautiful point by Srila Prabhupada in the beginning of this purport, showing the relationship between the Lord and the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was definitely powerful. And why was he so powerful? Because he was backed by the grace and the mercy of Krishna. And Prabhupada is making the point that sometimes the devotees can even be more powerful. Why? Not because of the fact that they are powerful independent of Krishna. No, it's because Krishna allows them by his grace to become more powerful than him. Krishna glorifies the devotees. Krishna wants to make Arjuna the hero of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So Krishna does this due to the love that he has for his devotees and the devotees' love for him. This is the Bhaktavatsal, the wonderful exchange of Krishna and devotees. Then Prabhupada makes a very interesting point that any promise made by a devotee, though it may be ordinarily very difficult to fulfill, is properly executed by the grace of the Lord. The pure devotee of the Lord is completely dedicated and surrendered to pleasing the Lord without any expectation. Unmotivated, uninterrupted. And Krishna wants to reciprocate. Krishna wants to serve that devotee, but that devotee will not allow Krishna to serve him because I am the servant. I cannot allow. Therefore, you find in lives of our acharyas, there are many, many situations where the pure devotees, the acharyas, will not allow the Lord or request the Lord to engage in their service. When Rupa Goswami, the Jiva Goswami, who offered the sweet rice, where the ingredients were supplied, or was it Rupa Goswami? So Radharani brought the ingredients for Rupa Goswami and offered the ingredients, made the sweet rice and offered it to Sanatana Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami, when he tasted this, he could understand this is not ordinary ingredients. And then when he understood that Radharani came and offered the ingredients, he wasn't happy. We are meant to serve Srimati Radharani, not the other way around. When Lord Krishna and Lord Krishna even brought or stole milk for Madhavendra Puri. He didn't, it was a wonderful gesture in terms of loving reciprocation, but he didn't feel appropriate that just see, now everyone's going to glorify me. So in this way, we see that the devotees will always try to serve the Lord and not disturb the Lord in his service. Jananivas Prabhu says this is also why Lord Krishna appears as Lord Nrsimhadev, so that we don't disturb the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and ask the Lord to protect us or to give us things, but we go to Lord Nrsimhadev for protection. Now, because the devotees do not allow the Lord to serve them, but the Lord still wants to serve. And therefore the Lord makes arrangements to always allow or make a situation so that he can serve the devotees. And one way is in this way, that as soon as a pure devotee has a wish or has a promise has a desire, the Lord immediately tries to execute that. So the Lord is eager to wait for the promises of a devotee. Sometimes you'll see Prabhupada says, I promise you, if you follow the 4 Ignorant Principles, chant 16 rounds, and try to preach to the best of your ability, guaranteed to go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada on his own, independent of Krishna's grace, does not have the potency to do that. But because of his surrender and pure devotion to Krishna and his grace upon Krishna, Krishna is waiting for those promises that Prabhupada is making. And then Krishna will properly execute those promises. So many statements that Prabhupada makes in his Bhaktivedanta purports during his lectures, different promises that Prabhupada is making, Krishna is eagerly waiting to fulfill those promises. And for us, that is our saving grace. That is for our benefit. That is the glory of being connected to Srila Prabhupada, who made many such promises. And Krishna will try to fulfill that. The Pandavas, by their unalloyed devotional service and full surrender unto the Lord, made it possible for the Lord to become a chariot driver or sometimes the letter messenger. Such duties executed by the Lord for his devotees are always very pleasing to the Lord, because the Lord wants to render service to his unalloyed devotees, whose life has no other engagement than to serve the Lord with full love and devotion. Maharaj Parikshit, grandson of Arjuna, the celebrated friendly servant of the Lord, was a pure devotee of the Lord like his grandfather. And therefore the Lord was always with him, even from the time when he was helplessly lying in the womb of his mother and was attacked by the blazing Brahmastra weapon of Ashwatthama. A devotee is always under the protection of the Lord, and therefore the assurance of protection by Maharaj Parikshit would never be without meaning. The personality of religion accepts this fact and thus thank the king for he's been true to his exalted position. Sometimes a leader will say, I'll protect you, but they don't have any potency to protect. Maharaj Parikshit was skilled. He was born in a lineage of great warriors and Kshatriyas. So he had the guidance, proper lineage, and he was backed by the Supreme Lord as well. He was a pure devotee. So no doubt when Maharaj Parikshit would speak, they would hear. And that's why Prabhupada said, that's why you need a Mahabhagavat. Because with the Mahabhagavat, there's potency, there's power. There's physical prowess, physical power, and there's devotional power. And when you put those two combinations together, practically invincible. 18. Na vayam klesha bijani yathas syu purushar sabha purusham tam bijani no vakya beda vimohita. O greatest among human beings, it is very difficult to ascertain the particular miscreant who has caused our suffering, because we are bewildered by all the different opinions of theoretical philosophers. So now Dharma is answering the question, which miscreant has caused this? And the first response that Dharma gives is, it is very difficult to ascertain the miscreant. Prabhupada in the purport says, there are many theoretical philosophers in the world who put forward their own theories of cause and effect, especially about the cause of suffering and its effect on different living beings. Generally, there are 6 great philosophers: Kanada, the author of Vaisheshika philosophy; Gautama, the author of logic; Patanjali, the author of mystic yoga; Kapila, the author of Sankhya philosophy; Jaimini, the author of Karma Mimamsa; and Vyasadeva, the author of Vedanta Darshan. Although the bull or the personality of religion, the cow, the personality of earth, knew perfectly well that the personality of Kali was the direct cause of their suffering. Still, as devotees of the Lord, they knew well also that without the sanction of the Lord, no one could inflict trouble upon them. So that statement, Prabhupada is giving the answer which Dharma the bull is not giving. So, firstly, there is the direct cause of suffering, and then there is the sanction of the Lord. And we also have to understand that sanction of the Lord doesn't mean that the Lord condones the suffering. The Lord is causing the suffering. No. Sanction means, according to karma, the Lord is sanctioning. Not that the Lord is sanctioning because the Lord likes and allows that, that yes, I love this, I like this, I want this to happen. No. Sometimes the Lord has to sanction and he does not want it. But because of past karma, because of certain curses, because of some blessings, even the Lord is bound by the cause and effect of this world, and he has to allow that to happen. So even the Lord has to tolerate when he comes in this world. He may able to, he has full power to transgress. He has full power to change anything. But we find that the Lord will allow what needs to happen. If we see when Lord Krishna appeared on this in this world 5,000 years ago, he could have stayed with Srimati Radhavani, with the cowherd girls forever, for 125 years. But he had to suffer separation, fulfilling the curse of Sudama. So in this way, the Lord will also obey and follow the rules and regulations that govern this creation, and not just break them or not follow them, even though the Lord is completely independent. According to Padma Puran, our present trouble is due to the fructifying of seedling sins. But even those seedling sins also gradually fade away by the execution of pure devotional service. Thus, if the devotees see the mischief monger, they do not accuse them for the sufferings inflicted. They take it for granted that the mischief monger is made to act by some indirect cause, and therefore they tolerate the sufferings, thinking them to be God-given in small doses, for otherwise the suffering should have been greater. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to get a statement of accusation against the direct mischief monger, but they declined to give it on the above mentioned grounds. Speculative philosophers, however, do not recognize the sanction of the Lord. They try to find out the cause of suffering in their own way, as will be described in the following verses. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, such speculators are themselves bewildered, and thus they cannot know that the ultimate cause of all causes is the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. So those statements in the middle of the paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is basically giving us the conclusion of how we should cultivate this type of thinking when we are on the receiving end. Because all suffering has a root cause. Here we find that whatever karma we're getting, that karma that we're getting, the productive karma that's coming to us, is coming to us because of a seed that's now fructifying in the form of the karma. That seed was sown by us in our previous life. That seed of sin has a root of desire. And we desire the wrong thing. The root of that desire is ignorance. So because of ignorance, we act and desire in the wrong way, and we sow the seeds of future karmic reaction. Every reaction that we experiencing in this world, big or small, internal or external, is caused due to us, due to ourselves, separating ourselves from Krishna. Because we are thinking, I'm independent of Krishna, therefore, all the suffering. So the cause of every form of suffering that we're experiencing, that we have experienced, that we're experiencing, we will experience, the root cause of that is forgetfulness of Krishna, forgetfulness that I'm a servant of Krishna, trying to be independent of serving Krishna. That's the root cause. Every other aspect or ramification or permutation is basically coming from that root cause. So as soon as I resolve that root cause, no more suffering. But Prabhupada gives the example, just like a fan that has the power and the fan is moving. If I pull the plug, that fan will keep moving for a while and then eventually stop. So like that also, when I surrender fully to the Supreme Lord, I accept Krishna as the Supreme Master. I as the eternal servant. And I surrender fully, then the plug is pulled out of karma and the karma eventually stops. So whatever little karma is there gets burnt up as we suffer it. So we tolerate the karmic reaction that comes. Why? Because we understand, firstly, as Prabhupada is saying, that Krishna's hand is in there in terms of sanction, and Krishna minimizes the karmic reaction. And because Krishna's hand is there in form of a sanction, that means Krishna is allowing it to happen. So that's very profound. If somebody is totally surrendered to Krishna and they accept Krishna as Lord and Master of their life, then whatever happens outside their own cause, that means suffering coming upon them, they accept it that yes, Krishna is sanctioning this, therefore I accept. Naturally, it's easier said than done or accepted, but that's the consciousness that we need to cultivate. Therefore, Prabhupada is making that point here. According to Padma Puran, our present trouble is due to the fructifying of seedling sins, but even those seedling sins also gradually fade away by the execution of pure devotional service. So when one gets suffering, one will continue executing devotional service. One will never stop serving the Lord, knowing that if I continue, there will come a time when all my seeds of sins are totally burnt up, totally destroyed. It's a beautiful example. If you take seeds, like you take fruit seeds or any spice seeds, and you shallow fry them, stir fry them, and then you plant them in the ground, they're not going to fructify. So by the power of devotional service, all our sinful seeds get fried, and therefore they don't fructify. Our desires get purified. So now we no more desire sinful activities or even pious activities. So nowadays, no more future pious activities, no more future sinful activities, no more seeds of past to to get suffering, that means only engaging in pure devotional service. Eventually the time will come when I'm completely liberated and I can experience the freedom of birth, death, disease, and old age. Freedom of suffering because of that. Thus, even if a devotee sees a mischief monger, they do not accuse them for the suffering inflicted. Consider if somebody has a cane and they're beating someone. The question is the cane beating the person? Because the person can say, I'm not beating him, the cane is beating him. Or is the person beating him? Or is it the law of karma that's behind the person holding the stick and beating? Or is it the sanction of the Lord who made the law of karma for the person to hold the stick and beat? So in this way, there may be multiple factors, and the devotee sees through the eye of scripture that yes, even though mischief monger is inflicting the suffering, it's due to my past misdeeds. They take it for granted that the mischief monger is made to act by some indirect cause, and therefore they tolerate the suffering, thinking them to be God-given in small doses. Or otherwise, the suffering should have been greater. So they tolerate and they accept and continue serving. Now, if the mischief monger is abusing someone, in that situation, from the abuser, they should see it like this. But from the leader's perspective, they should punish the mischief monger. So this statement does not authorize mischief mongers, like for example, abusing, elderly, abusing women, abusing children, right? It does not ordain, and does not authorize them to say, no, I can cause this because it's your past karma. I can abuse you because it's your past karma. Nope. They cannot use it like that. But those who abuse, they should see the suffering with this perspective. At the same time, because they got deep-rooted suffering, or that the abuse caused deep-rooted samskaras, that deep-rooted samskara can be relieved to some extent by the proper leadership giving due punishment to the mischief mongers. So there's always two aspects. One is strong leadership to make sure that there is no exploitation. And if there is exploitation, then there's due punishment. Like Prabhupada mentioned, if you cause harm, if you kill, you should be killed. So that punishment has to be there. At the same time, for one to be alleviated of the karmic reaction and not cause a cycle of karma, then one needs to see in this way. And again, it is not black and white that if, because I read this, I'll be able to apply it. No. If my father buys me a bicycle, just jumping on the bicycle or seeing a video of how someone is riding the bicycle, and if I jump on the bicycle, doesn't mean that on the first ride, I'll be able to ride that bicycle first time. No. I may fall, I may go to and fro. It'll be difficult, but I keep trying. I know how to ride the bicycle. I keep trying. Similarly, even this perspective to life, I may not pass on the first exploitation, but as I strengthen my devotional service, slowly I will come to this level. And we see For example, Jesus Christ, Lord, forgive them for they do not know what they do. Haridas Thakur, my Lord, I deserve worse. Do not punish them. It's due to my past, due to my low birth. I deserve worse. So like this, the pure devotee sees totally different. This is what purchases the Lord. Text 19. Kechit vikalpa vashana ahur atmana devam anye pare karma swabhavam apare prabhum. Some of the philosophers, those who deny all sorts of duality, declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activities are responsible, and gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Purport. As referred to the above, philosophers like Jaimini and his followers established that fruitive activity is the root cause of all distress and happiness, and that even if there is a superior authority, some superhuman powerful god or gods, he or they are also under the influence of the fruitive activity because they reward a result according to one's action. They say that action is not independent because action is performed by some performer. Therefore, the performer himself is the cause of his own happiness or distress. In Bhagavad Gita 6.5, also it is confirmed that by one's own mind, freed from material affection, one can deliver himself from the suffering of material pangs. So, one should not entangle oneself in matter by the mind's material affection. Thus, one's own mind is one's friend or enemy in one's material happiness and distress. Atheistic, materialistic Sankhyats conclude that material nature is the cause of all causes. According to them, combination of material elements are causes of material happiness and distress, and this integration of matter is the cause of freedom from all material pangs. Gautama and Kanada find that atomic combination is the cause of everything. The impersonalists like Ashtavakra find that spiritual effulgence of Brahman is the cause of all causes. But in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself declares that he is the source of the impersonal Brahman, and that he, the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate cause of all causes. It is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that Lord Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes. So different philosophers are there, at different stages, they're seeing and perceiving the cause of suffering. And the conclusion, Krishna, Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna is the cause of all causes. So for a devotee, see, the devotee wants to link everything to Krishna. The devotee wants to be Krishna conscious. And because the devotee wants to be Krishna conscious, he's going to link everything to Krishna. In this way, he becomes Krishna conscious. And because he becomes Krishna conscious, by linking everything to Krishna, then there is no suffering. Consider, if I don't have a job and it's really austere and really difficult and really challenging in that situation without a job, and I'm praying to Krishna and all of a sudden I get a job just in time, what I'm going to say, thank you, Krishna. So I thank Krishna for something that's beneficial, that's rewarding. So I got a job. Now someone can argue, right? What does Krishna have to do with that job? It was the boss that gave you the job. It was your skills that you had that the boss was impressed with that gave you the job. It was just time, place, and circumstance that it so happened that you saw the ad that, and you went for the interview that gave you the job. It was the vehicle that took you for the interview that gave you the job. It was the wife that paid for the petrol. So you went to the interview that gave you the job. So there may be so many circumstances and so many aspects that one can discuss and debate how did you get the job? But the fact that you got the job, which was wonderful, as a devotee, you linked it to Krishna. And naturally, people link anything that's rewarding, that's wonderful. Thank you, God. Even though there may be many factors, but we link it to thank you, God. Similarly, any suffering that we get, thank you, God. Thank you, Krishna. We link it to Krishna. So mercy of, sweet and sour mercy coming from Krishna. We link it to Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. So in this way, we are connecting, the devotees connecting every circumstance, every situation to Krishna. Why? For our benefit, for learning the lessons we need to learn, for our purification. Krishna knows best in what situation we need to be in for us to learn all the lessons we need to learn. We will not be in any situation, especially for those who are trying to surrender to the Supreme Lord, if it's not beneficial for us. It's there for us to grow. So we never lose faith, but we always accept, yes. Because Krishna is the cause, I accept. And I continue engage in devotional service without blaming, without pinpointing, without creating a cycle of karmic reaction. 20. Apratarkyad anir deshyad iti keshwapi nishchaya atranu rupam rajarse vimshra swamani saya. There are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage amongst kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your own intelligence. So throughout the discussion, Dharma did not point out the perpetrator. He gave different philosophers that say these are the causes, and you decide. So very important lesson we're going to learn from this specific situation of Dharma. Purport. As explained above, the Vaishnavites, the devotees of the Lord, believe that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme. Okay, so Prabhupada is laying a very important foundation for us, that when we are receiving, or when we are on the receiving end, this is how we should perceive the situation. That nothing happens without the sanction of the Lord. We may not be able to digest it or accept it, but this is the Siddhanta. This is the philosophy. This is the truth. He is the supreme director, for he confirms in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he, as the all-pervading Paramatma, stays in everyone's heart as a witness and keeps vigilance over all actions of the living being. The argument of the atheist that one cannot be punished for one's misdeeds unless they are proved before qualified justice is refuted herein. For we accept the Lord as the perpetual witness and constant companion of the living being. So we don't need a court case. The Supreme Lord is the perpetual judge, which means that there will be situations where you find that you had a close escape. You came so close to that suffering. Like, for example, an accident, or somebody shot at you and the bullet missed you. Or it so happened that you did not board a flight that exploded. You get the picture. There are different situations where you just missed it. Some timing was perfect. Well, it's Krishna's arrangement. Krishna decided, okay, not for you. He's the sanctioner, not for you. And in some cases, you are meant to be in that situation. And Krishna says, okay, we'll erase that. We'll let you scot-free on that one. And you don't know. You just happen to pass that situation. So we don't know how Krishna decides to give us or not give us, to minimize, to not minimize, to avoid, or even some cases to give us something that may not necessarily be in our karma, but he can ordain it for his purpose. Whatever the situation is, all we need to be confident about, it's sanctioned by Krishna. He's the super soul. He knows. And it may be difficult. No problem. You can cry to Krishna. You can cry, Krishna, this is traumatic. This is causing me suffering, Krishna. I cannot accept this, Krishna. So you can speak to Krishna. You can cry to Krishna. Krishna understands. And you can also pray to Krishna, give me the strength to come through this. Strong understanding, because your hand was involved, because you sanctioned it, I'm going to digest, I'm going to tolerate, I'm going to have to accept it. And no matter what the situation is, no matter, it's painful for me, it's difficult, I can't accept it, I'm arguing, how can it be, why, whatever it is, I'm never going to give up engaging in devotional service. A living being may forget all that he might have done in his past or present life, but one must know that in the same tree of the material body, the individual soul and the supreme soul, the Paramatma, are sitting like two birds. One of them, the living being, is enjoying the fruits of the tree, whereas the supreme being is there to witness the activities. Therefore, the Paramatma feature, the supreme soul, is actually the witness of all activities of the living being, and only by his direction can the living being remember or forget what he might have done in the past. The Lord is therefore both the all-pervading impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma in everyone's heart. He is the knower of all, past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. The devotee knows this truth, and therefore they discharge their duties sincerely without being overly anxious for the rewards. So Prabhupada is trying to explain to us from the top sentence to the end of the sentence of the paragraph. His conclusion is the devotee knows the truth, and therefore they discharge their duties sincerely without being overly anxious for the rewards. Krishna is there. He's the Paramatma. He does his job perfectly. So we may have forgotten, and sometimes you see people say, why am I suffering? I mean, what did I do? I'm such a good soul. I always do good. I always be good. I'm trying to help people, and then I'm still getting all this undue suffering. It's unfair. It's unfair because you don't see past, present, and future. You don't see what you did in your past lives. Now you're a good person. What about your previous 100 lives, 200 lives, 300 lives? You can't say I've been good every single one of my lives. Well, if you have that understanding that you have been good every single one of your lives, you wouldn't be here in the first place. The fact that you are here implies that you were bad once upon a time. Right? And in this world of duality, as long as we are riding on the platform of the mind, we will fluctuate from good and bad. The process of Krishna consciousness allowing us to transcend good and bad through the process of Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Besides that, Prabhupada continues, one cannot estimate the Lord's reactions, either by speculation or by scholarship. Why does he put some into difficulties and not others? He is the supreme knower of the Vedic knowledge, and thus he is the factual Vedantist. At the same time, he is the compiler of the Vedanta. No one is independent of him, and everyone is engaged in his service in different ways. In the conditioned state, such services are rendered by the living entities under the force of material nature, whereas in liberated state, the living entity is helped by the spiritual nature in the voluntary loving service of the Lord. There is no incongruity or inaberration in his sanctions. All are on the path of the absolute truth. Bhishmadev correctly estimated the inconceivable actions of the Lord. The conclusion is, therefore, that the sufferings of the representative of religion and the representative of earth as present before Maharaj Parikshit was planned to prove that Maharaj Parikshit was an ideal executive head, because he knew well how to give protection to the cows, the earth, and the brahmanas, religious principles, the two pillars of spiritual advancement. So Prabhupada is saying it was planned to glorify Maharaj Parikshit, to prove this point that Maharaj Parikshit was an ideal executive head. Now, if I take that statement, I can start debating the wait. Are we saying that the Lord can plan to glorify one devotee and cause suffering to the other two devotees? What type of Lord is this? And therefore, Prabhupada made it very clear, you cannot debate that with the Lord. The Lord is the knower of Vedanta. The Lord is the knower of everything. The Lord will not cause harm to anyone. Consider Prahlad Maharaj, pure devotee of the Lord. Why did he have to go through so much tormenting, difficulty by his father? How can the Lord allow that if he is totally surrendered to the Supreme Lord? See, this is how we perceive from a material conditions perspective. We seeing Prahlad Maharaj inflicted with suffering. Prahlad Maharaj didn't see it as suffering. In fact, it's described that he was seeing how wonderful his father is in every exchange, because the Lord was making the arrangement and protecting him in every situation. So his perspective to the experience was totally different from the external perspective. At the same time, the Lord will not put someone in suffering if they are not capable of enduring that suffering. The Lord may put someone in suffering to teach others. So there may be so many lessons or reasons rather why the Lord is doing something that apparently from our perspective seems unfair. Consider, here probably saying that this was planned to glorify Maharaj Parikshit, but then we could also take it the other way. It's also glorifying Mother Earth and Dharma. Why? because Dharma is following Dharma. Dharma, who's meant to follow Dharma, is perfectly following Dharma in this episode by not blaming and finding faults. Taking full responsibility. So both are glorified in this wonderful episode. So on one hand, you could say it's unfair. How can Kali do this? On the other hand, Krishna is presenting to us through these devotees the most important lessons we need to learn in our conditioned state of how we can transcend the karmic law of cause and effect. Because as long as we do not transcend the law of cause and effect, we will have to stay in this world to endure and suffer the consequence, or enjoy the consequence. So the stage where Mother Earth, the cow and the bull, and Maharaj Parikshit are there to teach us this amazing lesson. Everyone being under the full control of the Lord is quite correct. Sorry, everyone being under the full control of the Lord, he is quite correct in his action when he desires something to be done by someone, irrespective of the consideration of a particular case. See, we're dealing with Krishna. The situation is related to Krishna. Krishna never makes a mistake. Krishna is never unkind. Krishna knows past, present, and future. Krishna will do what he needs to do at a particular point in time. It is Krishna's doing. I also give the reason it's amazing that Krishna appeared in this world to kill Kamsa. So when Krishna appeared in the cell of Kamsa, if his mission, yadai dharmasya glani bhavati bharata, he comes during every millennium to destroy the demons and to protect the devotees. So why did he go to Vrindavan? He could have just gone to Kamsa's bed and killed him. But Krishna didn't do that. Why? It's his sweet will. He knows best. And as Krishna goes to Vrindavan, Kamsa is still causing so much havoc across the globe. And still Krishna didn't kill him. Why? Krishna is waiting for the appropriate time. Okay, so if Krishna is waiting for the appropriate time, does that mean that Kamsa is going to be harming so many living entities? And all we have to do is sit and wait. Correct. Why? Because he knows best. Krishna is the Supreme Master, the Supreme Controller, the Supreme Yogeshwar. He's in control. He knows best. And you as a servant need to have firm faith, full faith in Krishna and accept what Krishna is doing. That Krishna knows best in terms of what to do, when to do, and how to do it. We simply have to develop the faith and accept Krishna's doing. As Prabhupada says, irrespective of the consideration of particular case. If Krishna is involved, he knows best. Maharaj Parikshit was thus put to a test for his greatness. Now, let us see how he resolves it by his sagacious mind. Here, I had to read up this word, sagacious mind. Prabhupada's language. Dharma, Dharma the bull had the wonderful understanding and sagacious mind means that Maj Parikshit also had the common understanding. So they both agreed, they both had the same frequency in terms of understanding. So let's see how he deals with the situation. Suto vacha evam dharme pravadati sasamprad dvija satama samahitena manasa vikeda parya chastatam. Sutta Goswami said, O best among the Brahmanas, the Emperor Parikshit, thus hearing the personality of religion speak, was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply. The statement of the bull, the personality of religion, was full of philosophy and knowledge, and the king was satisfied, since he could understand that the suffering bull was not an ordinary one. Unless one is perfectly conversant with the law of the Supreme Lord, one cannot speak such things touching philosophical truths. The emperor, being also on an equal level of sagacity, replied to the point without doubts or mistake. So Dharma was Krishna conscious, responded perfectly. Maj Parikshit is Krishna, accepted the si dharma gyan dharmo si vrishad rupadrik yad adharma krita stanam suchakasyapi tad bhavet. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. So very, very heavy statement, but the truth nonetheless. A devotee's conclusion is that no one can become a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. And therefore, the devotee does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent, and thus it is his grace. In the case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent. But in the case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee and put him into great difficulty. So if you get a job, thank you, Krishna. Now, if you lose the job, thank you, Krishna. Sometimes you may have to lose the job. Krishna's closing one door to open another door, to show you another door, because sometimes you do not see the next door if you're already in a frame of mind and you're not seeing certain things the way Krishna wants you to see. So sometimes Krishna will do certain things like that, right? To really open your eyes in certain ways. So God sent. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty when crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. That is a way a devotee accepts a thing, either favorable or unfavorable, and thus for a devotee the identifier is as much a sinner as the mischief monger. There is a way a devotee accepts a thing, either favorable or unfavorable. And thus for a devotee, the identify is as much a sinner as the mischief monger, which means if somebody steals something from you, and then somebody asks you, who did it? And you say him, the person who stole something from you gets a reaction for stealing. According to Manu Samhita, you get a reaction for stealing. But the fact that you were questioned and you said him, you pointed out the perpetrator, according to the law, you also get the same reaction as the perpetrator. That is the fine law of Dharma. And those who know Dharma understand this. So that's why the Dharma, the bull, and Maharaj Parikshit are making the same point, and Prabhupada is reiterating that in the purport. So we need to understand this, appreciate it, and try to build our life based upon this perspective in a practical and real way. Sometimes, and because you cannot avoid the fact that you have been caused pain, that you're suffering. So when you are inflicted with pain, depending on your level of Krishna consciousness, you will respond to that pain. And you can't artificially and prematurely respond. The pain will impact your thinking in a certain way. The true colors will come out when there's pressure. So when Jesus Christ was pressured, crucified, that pressure of pain, of being killed in that harsh way, did not impact his devotion. His devotion shined and came out very, very clearly. God forgive them, for they do not know what they do. In our case, it may not be like that, which is okay. It's a learning journey. We will learn. And let's say you go through the situation and you blame and you suffer and you go through turmoil, and it's like, then you read this purport again and it starts to reinforce. You start to get realizations. You improve your devotion more, you practice Krishna, you continue practicing, you chant more, and it starts to build a more and more solid foundation. And one day you may be crucified and you'll think like Jesus. You'll accept it. Yes, Krishna, this is best for me. You link it to Krishna. That is the way a devotee accepts a thing, either favorable or unfavorable, and thus for a devotee that identifies as much a sinner as the mischief monger. The devotee tolerates all reverses as God's grace. Maharaj Parikshit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was none other than a personality of religion himself. In other words, a devotee has no suffering at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. Profound point, profound truth, profound knowledge, realization may be difficult. In other words, a devotee has no suffering at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and the bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali, although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one else could understand the finer intricacies of the code of religion. So the king was sharp. He was able to detect from the response of the bull, he could detect, yes, You can say this because you are no ordinary bull. You are the personality of Dharma. And you are now glorified in the situation. So we see here it was planned to glorify Maharaj Parikshit, but Maharaj Parikshit is actually glorifying in terms of understanding the intricacies of the code of religion. Prabhupada will continue expanding on this. Atava deva mayaya nunam gatrim agochara chetaso vachas yasapi bhutanam or by word jugglery. A question may be raised as to why a devotee should Everyone still there? Nobody is responding in the chat. Yes, okay, thank you. All right, we will continue. Just let me know. Okay, yeah, but dropped. Okay. Let's hope I didn't drop at the most important points. So a devotee may be raised, a question may be raised as to why a devotee should refrain from identifying the actor and identifying an actor, although the devotee knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. Although one knows the ultimate doer, why should one pose himself as ignorant of the actual performer? And Prabhupada answers, to answer this doubt, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible, for everything is done by his deputed Maya Shakti, or material energy. Material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, and still he was put into doubts by the deluding energy, and thus he refrained from mentioning the supreme cause. This doubtfulness was due to the contamination of both Kali and the material energy. The whole atmosphere of the age of Kali is magnified by the deluding energy, and the proportion measurement is inexplicable. So here Prabhupada is explaining the influence of Kali and material energy, and that influence is to always put doubts, to cause the living entity to doubt Krishna, doubt Krishna's expertise, doubt the existence of Krishna, doubt the process of devotional service, the effects of devotional service. This is the nature of Kali. And Arjuna also had those doubts. And we may also have doubts. So it's not that we shouldn't have doubts. The fact that we are influenced by the age of Kali, in the atmosphere of Kali, doubts will be there. But Krishna is instructing Arjuna to slash those doubts. How? With the weapon of knowledge. So if we have doubt, we need to raise those doubts. We need to bring those doubts in the fore and try to understand. And you may bring a doubt and you may not get a satisfactory answer. Just like someone may bring a doubt to me and I may try to answer according to my understanding. My understanding is not absolute. My understanding is limited. And because of my limitations, I may not convince or clarify the doubt. That doesn't mean that you should not raise that doubt again until you get a proper understanding. You should continue doing that until that doubt is completely eradicated. We find in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna raised a doubt, Krishna tried to counteract it. Then he raises, but Krishna, I still don't understand. It's like, you're confusing more, Krishna. So someone might say, but how can Krishna confuse him more? Krishna didn't say, but Arjuna, I'm God, don't you get it? No, Krishna said, okay, Arjuna, no problem. Let me try to explain it differently. Krishna was very understanding, dealing with Arjuna's doubts. So we may have doubts, no problem. We may ask 100 questions, no problem. Keep asking the question, keep clarifying your doubts until all doubts are clarified. Because Kali will introduce more and more doubts to keep you covered in Maya, away from Krishna consciousness. And Krishna says, for the doubting soul, there is no success. There's no happiness in this life and the next. So we need to clarify, purify, destroy all doubts. 24. Tapasaucham daya satyam iti pada krite krita dharmam saistrayo bhagna smaya sangha madestava. In the age of Satya, truthfulness, your 4 legs were established by the 4 principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. But it appears that 3 of your legs are broken due to rampant irreligion in the form of pride, lust for women, and intoxication. So much Parikshit is responding. And here we see the verse where Srila Prabhupada established the 4 regular principles from. So even the 4 regular principles that we're following is not speculative. It's not Prabhupada's concoction. It is founded very, very strongly on scripture. Purport. The deluding energy of material nature can act upon the living being proportionately in terms of the living beings falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya. Moths are captivated by the glaring brightness of light, and thus they become prey to the fire. Similarly, the deluding energy is always captivating the conditioned soul to become prey to the fire of delusion. And the Vedic scriptures warn the conditioned souls not to become prey to the delusion, but to get rid of it. The Vedas warn us to not go to the but my internet. All right, I've got my backup internet. Let's see. Let me know if I am audible. And hopefully it will continue to hold. All right, give me one sec. All right, let us continue. Okay, so my screen is visible. All right, wonderful. Okay, so Prabhupada's talking. Prabhupada's talking about the deluding energy. The Vedas warn us not to go to the darkness of ignorance, but to progressive path of light. The Lord himself also warns that the deluding power of material energy is too powerful to overcome, but that one who completely surrenders unto the Lord can easily do so. But to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is also not very easy. Such surrender is possible by persons who have cultured transcendental knowledge based upon the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. These four principles of advanced civilization were remarkable features in the age of Satya. In that age, practically every human being was a qualified Brahman of the highest order, and in the spiritual orders of life, they were all Paramhamsas, or the topmost men of renounced order. By cultural standing, the human being were not at all subjected to the deluding energy. Such strong men of character were competent enough to get away from the clutches of Maya. So these four regular principles of freedom practically gets you free. It's called the regular principles of freedom because it gives you true freedom from the clutches of Maya. And this is the verse that we can use. If somebody says, oh, so why did Prabhupada say no, follow the four principles, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, intoxication? Because those four activities, they destroy the four principles of cleanliness, mercy, the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. which was the foundation in Seta Yuga that made people qualified to stay away from the clutches of Maya. As soon as we fall prey to meat eating, illicit, gambling, intoxication, it means we are getting bound by the clutches of Maya. But gradually, as the basic principles of Brahmanical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, become curtailed by proportionate development of pride, attachment for women, and intoxication, the path of salvation or the path of transcendental bliss retreated far, far away from human society. With the progression of the age of Kali, people are becoming very proud, very much attached to women, and increasingly victimized by intoxication. And note, attachment to women also means attachment to men, both ways. By the influence of the age of Kali, even a pauper is proud of his penny. The women are always dressed in an overly attractive fashion to victimize the minds of men. And men are addicted to drinking wine, smoking, drinking tea, chewing tobacco, etc. And we can also add men are addicted, or men overly dressing in attractive fashion to victimize women. All these habits, or so-called advancement of civilization, are the root causes of all irreligiosities, and therefore it is not possible to check corruption, bribery, and nepotism. You cannot check all these evils simply by statutory acts of police vigilance. You have to cure the disease of the mind by proper medicine, namely advocating the principles of Brahmanical culture or the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. So we can see how the four regular principles that Prabhupada introduced is so fundamental to help reverse the influence of Kali Yuga with all these different aspects of corruption, bribery, nepotism. See, Prabhupada didn't go and attack corruption. He didn't attack bribery. He didn't attack nepotism. He didn't attack irreligiosity. He didn't attack all these ills. But he laid the proper foundation of the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness with chanting the holy names of Krishna as the perfect remedy for every form of ill that Kali presents. The modern civilization based on economic development is creating a new situation of poverty and scarcity, with the result of blackmailing the consumers' commodities. If the leaders and rich men of society spend 50% of their accumulated wealth mercifully for misled mass of people and educate them in God consciousness, the knowledge of the Bhagavatam, certainly the age of Kali will be defeated in its attempt to entrap and victimize the conditioned souls. So Prabhupada is also putting a statement right in the middle of his Bhakti-Rasamrita purports. If a rich man reads this, hopefully he gets the message. Use your wealth to destroy the influence of the age of Kali. We must always remember that false pride or too high an estimation of one's own value of life, undue attachment to women or association with them, and intoxication of any kind will divert human civilization from the path of peace, however much the people clamor for peace in the world. The preaching of the Bhagavatam principles will automatically render all men austere, clean both inside and outside, merciful to the suffering, and truthful in daily behavior. Such a wonderful statement. The preaching of the Bhagavatam principles will automatically render all men austere, clean both inside and outside, merciful to the suffering, and truthful in daily behavior. That is the way of correcting the flaws of human society, which are very prominently exhibited in the present moment. There should be the political slogan. Preach the message of Bhagavatam principle that will automatically render all men austere, clean both inside and outside, merciful to the suffering, truthfully in daily behavior. This will This will correct all the flaws of human society. 25. Idanam dharma pradaste satyam nirvartayed yata tam jigrik satya adharmoyam anri tene ditakali. You are now standing on one leg only, which is your truthfulness, and you are somehow or other hobbling along. But quarrel personified, Kali, flourishing by deceit, is also trying to destroy that leg. Purport. The principle of religion do not stand on some dogmas or man-made formulas, but they stand on 4 primary regulative observances, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, truthfulness. The mass of people must be taught to practice these principles from childhood. Austerity means to accept voluntary things which may not be very comfortable for the body, but are conducive for spiritual realization. Fasting, for example, fasting twice or 4 times a month is a sort of austerity which may be voluntarily accepted for spiritual realization only, and not for any other purposes, political or otherwise. Prabhupada's hinting. Fasting for political agenda, that's not going to help your consciousness. Fasting which are meant not for self-realization, but for some other purposes are condemned in Bhagavad Gita 17:5 and 6. Similarly, cleanliness is necessary for both the mind and the body. Simply bodily cleanliness may help to some extent, but cleanliness of the mind is necessary, and it is affected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. It is affected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. No one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. A godless civilization cannot cleanse the mind because it has no idea of God. And for this simple reason, people under such a civilization cannot have godly qualification, however they may be materially equipped. We have to see things by their resultant action. The resultant action of human civilization in the age of Kali is dissatisfaction. So everyone is anxious to get peace of mind. This peace of mind was complete in the Satya age because of the existence of the above mentioned attributes of the human being. Gradually, these attributes have diminished in Tetra Yuga to 3/4 and in Dwapar to half, and in this age of Kali to 1/4, which is also gradually diminishing on the account of prevailing untruthfulness. By pride, either artificial or real, resultant action of austerity is spoiled. By too much affection or female association, cleanliness is spoiled. By too much addiction to intoxication, mercy is spoiled. And by too much lying propaganda, truthfulness is spoiled. The revival of Bhagavad Dharma can save human civilization from the falling prey to the evils of all description. So the remedy Prabhupada is giving very, very clear. 26. Yam cha bhumir bhagavata nya sito rupara sati Srimad Vistatpada nyase sarvata kritako tuka. The burden of the earth was certainly diminished by the personality of Godhead and by others as well. When he was present as an incarnation, all good was performed because of his auspicious footprints. Sauchatya ashru kala sadvi durba gevo jita sati abramanya nripa vajya sudra bhokshantimam iti. Now she, the chaste one, as if most unfortunate due to being forsaken by the personality of God, laments her future with tears in her eyes. For now she has been ruled and enjoyed by lower class men who pose as rulers. The Kshatriya, or the man who is qualified to protect the sufferers, is meant to rule the state. Untrained lower class men or men without ambition to protect the sufferers cannot be placed on the seat of an administrator. Unfortunately, in the age of Kali, the lower class men without training occupy post of a ruler by strength of popular votes, and instead of protecting the sufferers, Such men create a situation quite intolerable for everyone. Such rulers eagerly gratify themselves at the cost of all comforts of the citizens, and thus the chaste Mother Earth cries to see the pitiable condition of her sons, both men and animal. That is the future of the world in the age of Kali, when irreligiosity prevails most prominently, and in the absence of a suitable king to curb irreligious tendencies. Educating the people systematically in teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam will clear up the hazy atmosphere of corruption, bribery, blackmail, etc. So the wisdom, the knowledge of the Bhagavatam is of paramount of importance to really cause a revolution in the hearts of all. A revolution where there's no bloodshed, but a revolution that will purify the consciousness and remove all these ills of Kali Yuga. And thus ends these sets of verses where Maharaj Parikshit responded in appreciation to Dharma's response that one who finds and points the perpetrator is as guilty as the perpetrator. And therefore, whatever comes to us, we accept it as I am the cause. I need to take full responsibility and change the cause of my future actions or future reactions by the way I respond today, not blaming, but taking full responsibility and accountability for one's actions. Krishna is sanctioning my past, giving it to me, and all I need to do is accept that Krishna sanctioned it. It's Krishna's grace. Let me accept it and let me continue engaging in his eternal loving service so that I can become more and more purified. And as I become more and purified, then I can transcend all these ills of action and reaction and ultimately be situated eternally in loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada is encouraging the readers that Bhagavatam has to be spread. Bhagavatam, the message of Bhagavatam needs to be given out to the leaders so that they may be able to embrace these principles of religion. No meat eating, no sex, no gambling, no intoxication. And by allowing everyone to embrace these Brahmanical principles, then Kali's influence will be dampened and completely reverted, and Krishna consciousness can be established without any exploitation, corruption, nepotism, which we experience in this world. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Itai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol. Right, let us take any questions or comments you may have. Bafana Prabhu's got a few. Let me know what you thought of Dharma's response in finding the perpetrator. Bafana, regarding suffering, somehow can it not be that it is defined perhaps in simpler terms? Someone presenting a class commented that suffering is a choice of intelligence. So by this, he meant to infer that there actually is no suffering. How does mental state of equipoise under distress is related to ascetic, which is displayed by the personality of Queen Kandari, who is described as having no competence executing this quality, ascetic nature in the history of the world? All right, so yes, there's also a statement that says misery is always there, but suffering is optional. So misery you cannot avoid, but suffering you can. How? We are in a miserable situation. The political environment, Kali's influence, birth, death, and old age, this is all miserable, right? And its permutations and ramification, it's miserable. I'm in a miserable environment. I cannot avoid it. But by the culture of Bhagavatam, by the perspective of the Bhagavatam, by Krishna conscious perspective that Srila Prabhupada is sharing with us through the pages of the Bhagavatam, I can change the perspective, how I see, how I respond, and how I accept the suffering. That means if I learn the art of Krishna consciousness and the perspective of Krishna consciousness, then really, truly speaking, there's no suffering. And therefore, it is a choice of intelligence, because I need to engage the intelligence through the pages of the wisdom and intelligence of the Bhagavatam to apply it on myself to see the world in the way Krishna wants me to see. And when I do that, Krishna becomes pleased, Prabhupada becomes pleased. I feel the bliss, I feel the happiness, even amidst the turmoil, even amidst the suffering. Right? So that is how one perceives suffering. In fact, another statement Prabhupada makes is that material suffering is superfluous to the living entity. The true living entity does not experience all what we are experiencing in the conditioned state. In the conditioned state, we are experiencing suffering because I'm attached to the body, because I'm attached to the mind. I'm experiencing the suffering related to the body and the mind. But the soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon. It can't be burned. It can't be weathered. It's completely transcendental to the suffering we experience. But because of false ego, I'm thinking I'm this body, I'm experiencing suffering. So truly speaking, material suffering for the soul means nothing, doesn't exist. And that's why you will see Prabhupada uses the word false suffering. Doesn't exist, superfluous. But for the conditioned soul, wow, it is suffering. So Prabhupada is giving us the process to become unconditioned, come back to revive, renovate our true Krishna consciousness. I hope that shed some light, Bhafana Prabhu. Next question. Hearing the purport in the topic of progression of Kali's influence, one can only conclude that the influence of the person of the Kali is really under serious attack. From the revolutionary movement, Harinam Sankirtan, pioneered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the guidance of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Yes, that's for sure. And even when Srila Prabhupada was present, Kali was trying to break the movement. And even now, Kali is trying very hard. In fact, when Prabhupada left, Kali definitely infiltrated and practically was on the verge of destroying this movement at the root. And the movement is still alive. So Kali tried and Kali is trying. But Prabhupada said that if we stick to the principles that he has given us, we will be successful. So the movement of the Hare Krishna movement that Prabhupada established, and obviously all the other spiritual organizations that are truly following the previous acharyas, are definitely a threat to the age of Kali. I want to relate how in confidence I am learning to tolerate unfavorable situations such as having zero on my account. But my faith to Lord Krishna as sanctioner of all causes and effect, I have maintained equipoise mental state and anxiety is so well regulated. My faith is renewed by my accepting the situation as based on my actions and not on other reasons. And it is this consciousness that influence even my prayers, approach, and chanting. Yes. And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's good to have that perspective and then never to lose the momentum in trying to recover from that situation by the mercy of Krishna. As time progresses, more and more devotees will be put in such situations. And at the same time, we need to be practical in terms of money is attracted by offering value. So if you can offer value, you can attract Lakshmi. For you to attract value means you need to upskill. You need to have skills that you can offer to others so that you can be remunerated. If we don't keep skilling ourselves and are not able to add value, then we will unfortunately be in such situations. So we always need to keep with the trends and the reality that we are in, so that we can, at least to the best of our ability, avoid such situations, which is also part of being Krishna conscious. Just like looking after this body, health is not outside the purview of Krishna consciousness. Looking after the body is also Krishna conscious, and one has to look after the body. Now, if one says, yeah, looking after the body is Maya, because firstly, you're not this body, so what's the use of even looking after the body? No. Looking after your health means you are able to be healthy to serve Krishna. So having some financial security is also important, so that you can be able to stay afloat and be Krishna conscious in that situation. But staying Krishna conscious even amidst that situation of financial difficulty is also very, very revealing in terms of your Krishna consciousness. All of it is so imperfect, but accepting, cultivating this approach makes and keeps me going forward with full hope of receiving relief. And even if it doesn't come at the end, at my convenience, of attitude of remaining faithful to Krishna somehow enhances my relationship to the whole name. We keep faith, we keep practice, and we keep doing what's practical, and Krishna will change the situation if he so desire, but definitely he will. Shama says, thank you, Prabhu, for the excellent class. Nalini Kanta Prabhu says, Srimad Bhagavatam Srila Prabhupada's purports are definitely food for our souls. Thank you, Prabhu, for this divine nourishment, nourishing Krishna conscious class. Haribol, thank you very much. Nalini Kanta Prabhu, Matalash, Hare Krishna, thanks for the Krishna Katha, a very powerful and beautiful transcendental class. We are also told that we should not let anyone exploit us. True. And we should stand up for ourselves against exploitation. True. So how do we find the balance between accepting the sanction of the Lord due to our past karma versus standing up for ourselves to stop exploitation? How do we understand the difference between the two? Yes. So we always stop exploiting. We will avoid exploitation. We would avoid others from exploiting us. Right? And that means that we don't enter into environments of exploitation. We do not allow others to exploit us. Prabhupada said, if somebody's coming to you with a knife, what would you do? Do we say, okay, it's Krishna's arrangement, I'm not in control, let Krishna do whatever he wants? No. This is Krishna's body also. I will prevent that person from harming the body. So yes, we should avoid being exploited. We also have to try to implement processes so that exploitation is reduced or not present. That is the role of the leaders. The leaders are meant to create an environment which is free from exploitation. So that has to be there. But you may find yourself, even when you are trying to avoid exploitation and you have leaders that are trying to avoid implementing processes to avoid that you get exploited by unscrupulous people. When you are in that situation, then try to see the perspective of the Bhagavatam. At the same time, the leaders, as I mentioned, need to make sure that they do what's needful to punish those who exploit. So if you see from your side, you need to see first, okay, from your side, you need to prevent being exploited as best as you can. And when you are exploited, see the perspective of the Bhagavatam. From the leader's perspective, they need to create a favorable environment free from exploitation, corruption, and nepotism. And when somebody breaches those principles, they need to make sure they have due punishment for them. If you look at Dharma the bull and March Parikshit, Dharma the bull is representing us, how we should see perpetrators. And March Parikshit is representing the rulers, the leaders, and how they should take and do the needful to punish Kali. Even though Dharma the bull was acting on the proper perspective, March Parikshit didn't say, okay, yeah, you're right, you know what, it's your karma. And you can't really point finger at Kali. So I'll let Kali scot-free because it's not Kali, it's your karma. You accept it as Krishna's arrangement, then Kali is free. No, we're going to continue with the verses. We're going to see March Parikshit deals with Kali, right? So both sides. So that's how I hope that shed some light in terms of you avoiding, but you remember we can avoid, just like we avoid accidents on the road. We don't want accidents, but you have to drive for the other people also. You driving for safety, you have to drive for other safety also, because others may be negligent. You cannot avoid suffering in this world. Negligence of other people, the corruption of other people, the bad values of other people will inflict suffering upon you. You cannot avoid it. It's the reality. But when you are in that situation, how to overcome the pain as well as not get implicated in the karmic reaction. See, we're gonna see this example. Here we're getting the perfect example. We're gonna see the converse of this in the pastime of Daksha and Lord Shiva. Daksha curses Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva's associates, they curse Daksha, and it goes to and fro, curse and counter curse, curse and counter curse. That means action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction implicates one in karmic correction. We do not want to extend our stay in this world. We want to go back home. If you want to go back home, we need to culture the aspects of Krishna consciousness into our psyche, into our life. Prabhupada is giving us the Bhaktivedanta purports to give us that culture which we have forgotten. And that culture is how to see this world, how to react to this world in a way that does not endure or does not continue our suffering. Hare Shamananda Prabhu said, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much for helping us with the questions asked and for the nice explanation on the topics covered today. Srila Prabhupada nicely gives us the facts and understanding as to how to see things and react accordingly. With that understanding, we can continue to try to serve Krishna through the ups and downs. Yes. And we can see Prabhupada is he's not fanatical, right? He's very practical. We see Prabhupada himself suffered, but how you are seeing the suffering in a practical way at the same time continuing the preaching of Krishna consciousness. That is an acharya. That is the perfect example. Thank you, Bafana Prabhu. Mother Archana Siddhi says, thank you, Prabhu. Very beautiful, beautiful explanation. I have learned a lot. Thank you very much. Mother Lesh understood. Thanks for the clarity. Wonderful. Yes. And as I mentioned, these are the philosophy that Prabhupada is sharing in his Bhaktivedanta purports are absolute. They're the highest. You're not going to find something higher than what we have. The Bhagavatam is the highest. It's the truth of all truths. It's the epitome of all truths. You're not going to get something higher. So these truths that Prabhupada is revealing in these Bhaktivedanta purports, they are exalted. They are profound. They're not just your basic down in the middle truths there that you get, people putting things together and giving it in. No, these are very profound, very elevated truths. So therefore, we will require strength. We need strength to follow them. And we get the strength by Prabhupada's mercy. We get the strength by Lord Chaitanya's mercy. We get the strength by the Vaishnava's mercy. We get the strength by the Bhagavatam's mercy. We get the strength by the process of devotional service and by chanting the holy names of Krishna. When we surrender to these personalities, we will get the strength to apply this wisdom in our life. And when we apply the wisdom in our life, we will be able to see and realize what Prabhupada is saying in these purports when we perceive the truth through the pages of the Bhagavatam. Thank you very much for everyone. Sorry for the internet cutting out, but at least we were able to continue and complete this section. We will meet again. I've got a seminar on one of the Saturdays, so I will let you know if it's actually next week's Saturday, the following Saturday, but I will let you know. If there is a seminar, we will postpone the class, and hopefully there will be no load shedding. Otherwise, we will meet again next week. Thank you. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai, Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol.